Michigan's win total to me feels way too high. 9.5 for the defending national champs that sent 18 guys to the combine, new coach, new quarterback, new defensive coordinator. Let's talk about it with Craig Shemon, Locked On Big Ten, joining me here on today's show. And Craig, am I nuts for just not understanding why Michigan is still being regarded in such high fashion in the betting community?
Well, that's great. I love the betting community. So when those win totals came out, I started talking about that. I did it on Locked On Big Ten, and Michigan fans got after me a little bit because I dared to suggest that they would take a step backward in 2024. However, I kind of softened it. I said, look, if they lose one game, that's a step backward. Okay. They were undefeated national champions last year. So whether it's one loss, two loss, three loss, they will take a step backward a little bit, but I think they'll still be competitive. I was talking to a former All-American offensive lineman from yesteryear, from the Bo years, and he said, look, man, the next round coming up, the guys that have been waiting, just as talented, just as good. I don't know if they're that talented, but they're going to be a pretty talented football team to where I think they will be competitive. But if they lose two or three games, I don't think it's the end of the world in a transition year at Michigan.
I don't think so either. I don't think it spells disaster for the program or would be a major indictment of Sherrone Moore. I think if Michigan goes 8-4, 9-3, and goes under their win total, I think that would be a successful first year because no one, myself included, and I think everybody else, is expecting them to go undefeated, as you said. And let's accept the premise for a moment that the offensive line will be just as good as it was last year. I don't think you can do that in a transition year like this. It can still be good. I think there's a high floor with what you've got on this Michigan roster because of the way they've recruited the last couple of years, but they sent a record 18 players to the NFL Combine, Craig. And when you have not been supremely active in the transfer portal, you can't field a roster that is as good as what you had the year prior when it was at that sort of level. I think the drop-off is going to be rather sizable. And look, does that mean they're, a 4 or 5 win team? No, I don't think so, especially with the non-conference schedule that they have, but they do have Texas in there. However, their schedule, generally speaking, is not insanely brutal. I just look at Texas, I look at Oregon, I look at Ohio State, and I think Michigan's going to be at a roster deficit in all 3 of those games.
Well, they might be. I think the comparison here to watch as the season goes on is let's watch Washington and let's watch Michigan. They both lost a boatload of people. They both have new coaches. We'll see how they do. Now, my vibe right now is that I think Michigan will be competitive. I don't know what to expect out of Washington. They may have to kind of start over a little bit. Maybe you feel differently. But those are going to be 2 case studies to go head to head. And you're right. Michigan did not hit the transfer portal hard. They also did not lose a bunch of guys the way when Nick Saban retired at Alabama and everybody left. That did not happen at Michigan. They only lost 1 or 2 guys. So the feeling is, a lot of the guys that are stepping up are still experienced guys. They've just been waiting their turn a little bit. So I don't think this is your typical cupboard is empty, losing 18 guys going to the combine and going to the NFL. That would be devastating for almost every team in college football. But I do think there's some talent coming in, and it's like you look at their offensive line. I think there's going to be 1 sophomore. Everybody else can be a junior or a graduate senior. And that's what they did last year. Anytime anybody got hurt or was out for a game or 2, they were replacing seniors with seniors. It is ridiculous how deep they are. And I think that will help them here in the transition period. I think the key year to watch will be next year, 2025. Sherrone Moore to be a year plus removed from Jim Harbaugh. Those will really be the younger guys. But from what I'm hearing, I think they're mildly optimistic that they're not going to win the Big Ten. They're not going to win. This is all about Ryan Day at Ohio State. Can he do it? Can Oregon come in and win in its first year? That's the storyline. And by the way, it's great those 2 teams play each other. But I don't think they're going to fall off. I don't think the bottom of the world's going to fall out from underneath them.
I think that depends on what your definition of, fallout is I don't expect Michigan to be a playoff team in 2024. I think if they did that, Sherrone Moore should get an extension and a raise. And I don't think that he should be harshly judged in this first year because of the amount of transition that he's dealing with. You mentioned Washington, and I think the Huskies are in a similar spot. Now, Vegas thinks that Michigan is going to be better. Their win total's a full 2 games above the Huskies there. The recruiting classes that are on the roster holding over from the Kalen DeBoer era are not as highly ranked, at least in the composite world and 24/7 sports and such, as what you've got at Michigan. So I think that's slight advantage to the Wolverines. Here's where I give the advantage to Washington in that side-by-side comparison. I've got a guy who has been a head coach for an entire season and also been the play caller. Now, Sherrone Moore has done, some spot work for Michigan, did very well this past season. Of course, beat Ohio State. It's not as if he's incompetent on game days, but I think it's different when you're filling in as the interim compared to when you have been the head coach. So I give Jed Fish the nod right there at this point in time. And then secondly, I've got Will Rogers, who has thrown hundreds upon hundreds and hundreds of passes in college football in his career. And on the other side, you got Alex Orji at quarterback, who's been a wildcat guy the last couple seasons. I know he can move, but I don't know that much else. That's where I give the advantage to the Huskies.
Well, and that's a great point on the quarterback, because as I sat here and told you for the first 3 minutes that, hey, they got guys stepping up in all the positions. Let's not forget the most important position on the field. And you're right. I don't know what Alex Orji is either. And look, he would come in for 3 plays, run a couple. And I don't know that he can throw downfield, although Michigan doesn't run a lot. But, I mean, come on, you got to be able to throw. I mean, they don't throw a lot. That's the problem with J.J. McCarthy right now. And coming off the combine, nobody's seen him throw. So
did he threw at the combine, right?
Yeah, he threw. I
think that's smart.
Stats, there's not a huge body of work. Like a typical game for J.J. McCarthy, the second half of the season was 12 pass completions for 140 yards and 1 touchdown, and they go win by 30 points. So everybody was all critical. He didn't have the body of work. He did throw at the combine a little bit, but Orji, he doesn't throw either. So I'm as curious as anybody to watch him in the spring game and see how he does in Ann Arbor with that, and then the couple other guys behind him. Because like you said, they didn't go and really get anybody in the portal, and they do have to get that figured out. That is a big question mark for Michigan.
Yeah, it is. And last thing that I'll get you out of here on, Craig, is the Jim Harbaugh move, of course, makes plenty of headlines, and Sherrone Moore is the head coach, but perhaps, I don't know if I would say unsung hero, but one of the key pieces of that national championship team was Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator. That Washington offense was legit. That's the best passing offense in college football since 2019 LSU, with Joe Burrow and 3 NFL receivers. You got a first-round quarterback in Michael Penix with 3 receivers. Michigan didn't just shut them down with personnel. They did so with scheme. They did not have the sorts of openings that they were accustomed to. Penix was under duress. He wasn't fully comfortable, never settled into the game. How big of a loss is that, in your view, losing Jesse Minter as the defensive coordinator, and what do you make of who they've brought in?
First of all, it's a huge loss. I agree with you. I thought it was absolutely brilliant trying to scheme Alabama and Washington in the postseason last year, and that is a big loss. Now they get Wink Martindale, who's he knows his way around a defense. It's going to be different, and he's a little older coach too. He's going to come in there and run things his way. They got some talent there with Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, guys on the defensive line that kind of stuffed the old defensive line. They got those guys coming back. Rod Moore comes back with the game-winning interception against Ohio State. So there is some talent there, but I think they got a good defensive coordinator, but I think really highly of Jesse Minter. And I think almost anybody that they would bring in might be a step down at coordinator on defense. So you bring up a good point.
Yeah, Wink Martindale, get ready, Michigan fans. On 3rd down, I'm going to spoil this for you. He's going to blitz. And when he's done blitzing, he's going to blitz a little bit more and make you try to figure it out. Craig Shemon, Locked On Big Ten. Thanks so much for stopping by, Craig. Appreciate it.
You bet. Anytime.